again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. Have you ever had a paranormal experience or seen a ghost? What was your story? Please remember to like, share, hype, ask, and listen for shoutouts, and subscribe.
I have never actually seen an apparition, but I have noticed some strange things happening at this house I used to live in. It was a 2-story house. I rented the lower floor in-law unit, and someone else lives upstairs. One time, my then boyfriend was on his way home. His car was parked outside on the street not too far from the house. He sat in his car, and he noticed a humanoid dark shadow in front of him. According to him, judging from the position of the shadow and the lighting, for the shadow to be cast there, the person would have to be standing right outside his car next to him. But there was no one. He also experienced the fight or flight reaction, or unexplainable fear, so he bolted and drove off. That same night, my neighbors upstairs also experienced something. Their lights went out, and I believe they also said that their clock stopped. Then an oven toaster, or it could have been a microwave, fell off the counter. There was no earthquake, and the oven was flushed all the way against the wall. They told me later that they knew there was a ghost in the house, and that it's a female. How they knew that, I have no idea. Later on they moved away, so the upstairs unit was empty. One night around midnight, I heard dragging footsteps from upstairs, but no one was there. There are other random things that happened in that house, like when my dogs would suddenly stop moving and stare at the door with their neck fur standing up. There was also a time when a Chinese paper charm that was placed over the door changed positions without anyone touching it. I worked my way through college as a CNA, splitting night shifts between an old hospital and nursing home. I didn't believe in ghosts before that and consider myself an agnostic, but ever since, you can't tell me there's no such thing as ghosts. The most common occurrence was simple shadows moving across rooms or hallways. I dismissed them the easiest as well. There are too many sources of light and movement that could explain a moving shadow. That being said, I'll be damned if I can explain a lot of them. One was just a few feet away from me and jumped from the hallway into a room. The words, of course, were the seemingly solid and/or intelligent figures. I entered the room of a dying resident once with a coworker. We opened the door to a pair of white shoes and white pants. Following the legs up, the figure disappeared at the knees. At night, we'd shut the doors to the Alzheimer cafeteria. Workers would get too freaked out walking by and seeing figures sitting at the tables, as though waiting for a meal. We'd hear screaming from empty rooms. People would feel as though they were being touched or whispered to. The most freaked out I ever got was one night at about 3 a.m. My favorite resident had just died the day before, and I was thinking about her. I just had a feeling she was there, a presence I couldn't explain. I was a little nervous, but decided to bite and said, "Doris, if you're here, move that picture frame." The 3 picture frames on the wall opposite me all tilted to the right, one after another. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I ran. I got help. I made a coworker sit with me the rest of the night. Surely some are going to call BS. I'm not prepared to say what a ghost is, but I know there's something out there we can't explain. In 1989, I was driving from Lafayette, Louisiana to Atlanta, Georgia for Dragon Con Origins. We left at around 5 p.m., thinking that we would get to Atlanta at around 7 a.m. Around 1 or 2 in the morning, we were passing through somewhere in Mississippi or Alabama. It was dark. There were no other cars on the road, and there was a light fog. Way up the road ahead of us, just at the very edge of my high beams, I could see what looked like a man walking on the side of the road. My friend, riding shotgun, says, "Hey, look, what's that guy doing there?" The figure was walking with its back turned to us and swinging his arms in a very exaggerated manner as he walked. I was going 75 to 80 mph, so it didn't take us long to catch up to it. As we passed, the thing spun around and threw its arms up in the air. There was a guy. He was bald, I don't know, but his face looked like it. Seems like he was dressed in gray robes. I screamed. The guy riding shotgun screamed. We woke up the dude sleeping in the back seat. He screamed. It was fucking horrifying. I stomped the gas and just white-knuckled it for probably 15 to 20 minutes until we were on the outskirts of some town. If my car would have stopped or broken down, I think I would have killed myself. Sorry, Venkman. I'm terrified beyond the capacity for rational thought. Before I tell this, I should let you know that my mom is a very normal person. Never had any mental issues, never done drugs, very scientific-minded, masters in math, and doesn't even really believe in the paranormal, but here's her story. When I was about 6, we had recently moved into a new house. One night my mom wakes not long after going to sleep and notices a light in the room. She looks around the room and sees her dresser, which is freaking glowing. The way she describes it is like a pale, golden, warm kind of glow. She gets a strange feeling to go downstairs, so she gets up and goes downstairs. She immediately starts to smell natural gas. Sight goes over to the stove and sees one of the dials is on, but there's no flame, so it's just leaking natural gas, and she turns it off. Apparently my dad had left it on by accident before he went to bed, and had my mom not woken up, the house very well could have exploded and caught fire, likely killing everyone inside. I had never heard their story until a few weeks ago when we were watching some ghost show, and my dad gives us crap about believing in the possibility of paranormal happenings. She replies, "You mean like how the dresser was glowing that night you tried to blow us all up?" I was confused and made her tell me the whole story. Crazy stuff. Hard to believe, but tell me you wouldn't believe your own mother if she swore this happened. 2 stories that I swear on Shaquille O'Neal are true. Of course, this is the internet, so not offended if you don't believe me. First story happened when I was about 3 or 4. I was too young to remember it, but my parents always tell me the story. According to them, I would wake up and tell them, and then the night my grandpa had come to visit me. At first they assumed this was a dream and didn't question it. After a few times of me telling them about this, they decided to ask, "Well, which grandpa is visiting?" To which I replied, "Oh, my Grandpa White." Now the weird part here is Grandpa White is my dad's long-dead grandfather, who I had never heard of before. Apparently for a while, I kept claiming to be visited by him, but I honestly don't remember it. The second story happened when I was in high school, and is something I clearly remember. My friend and I were around 10 or 11 at night. We were walking around in my small suburb. He really needed to take a piss, so we walked over to the nearby school, which was next to a very large farm field that was blocked off by a chain-link fence. So, my buddy walks up to the chain-link fence and starts taking a leak while I look around in boredom. I look out at the field behind the chain-link fence and see what looks like a white dog running, but then it vanishes into thin air. I think, okay, that was weird, but whatever. And then ask my friend if he saw it. Of course, since he was busy pissing, he missed it. Anyway, I continue to look, and this time I see it again, but this time it's on the opposite side of the chain-linked fence, in the school soccer field. I asked my friend if he saw it that time, and of course he did not. Now my friend's interest is piqued, so he starts watching the field with me. So here we are watching the field, and right in front of us, a circular cloud-like thing appears and starts coming straight toward us. Both of us turn at the same time and run like hell. When we look back, it's gone. To this day, we both talk about it and how weird that was.
Alright guys, want to give a hello. Thanks for dropping in, Ariel Chubb, 27 and change. Sorry if I didn't remember the full username, but Ariel Chubb. So again, thanks for sticking around and listening in. And yeah, so I enjoyed the paranormal stuff. I definitely liked yesterday's topic, tough that it was. I also kind of like the conspiracy ones. I know a lot of them, but there's always more popping up, and I like to learn from these too. So thank you guys for keeping up the content. and sharing your stories in the comment section as well. See you soon.
When I was about 13, my dad bought a house where this kid died. He died riding his bike on the highway just down the road. He lived in the shed converted to a room, bathroom, bedroom, drum set. It was a pretty sweet setup. Once we moved in the house, it was when it happened. My brother and my bedroom were facing the shed, and one night we heard drums playing like a steady beat with cymbals coming from the shed. We laughed it off at first and like, hey, we're crazy, just a joke, but after a while we started thinking, this is weird as shit. So we manned up and walked out there. About halfway there it stops, and it starts to rain. A little cliche, but it was creepy. So we decided to finish out our quest, if you will. We walked in, no sounds, nothing. It was dead quiet. We used the flashlight to sweep the room and came up to this dead kid's drum set, and we saw a shadow of a dude sitting on the drum stool. We hauled ass out of there, and we got back inside and didn't say a word. It was the weirdest shit I saw. About a year ago, I was over at my friend's, chilling in his room watching a film, and we were both sitting there quietly, as you do when watching a film. Anyways, we both hear someone running up the stairs and think it must be one of his housemates. The next thing you know, we hear a huge bang on the door of his room as if someone had kicked it. Open his door. No one is on the landing or in any of the rooms. We both go downstairs and search the house. Empty. It's pretty creepy house. Always felt like I was being watched when I crashed over there. There's on the sofa in the living room. My friend ended up moving out and heard that one of the other guys renting the house has heard loud grunting and mumbling when no one else is there. When I was a kid, we just moved into our new house. It was my first or second night there, and I was completely alone sleeping on the couch in the living rooms. My parents were downstairs. I was just laying there because it takes me a while to fall asleep, and I heard this voice of a man directly above me say just one sentence. It was very calm, matter of fact, like he was simply informing me of something. I never remembered what he said, but when he said it, I froze and eventually fell asleep. I tried to tell my family, but they just came up with bullshit excuses like it was the vents or something. I never heard it again the 5 years or so we lived there, and even though I consider myself a skeptic, I know deep in my heart that I definitely heard someone, and they were directly above me. I would also like to note that I've never hallucinated in my life. This was the only situation when I heard a disembodied voice talk to me. I got one. I used to be in the Boy Scouts. I didn't really care too much about it, so I wasn't very active in it. I only ever went to one of the summer camp trips where we stayed at a campsite for a week with no phones, computers, or really anything that would be used for communication. I went with a group of friends at night to try to find the astronomy field because there was a stargazing event we wanted to go to. This campsite was huge, and essentially every event location was at least a mile walk. It can be pretty easy to get lost there, especially at night. So of course that's exactly what happened to us. We were already terrified because these woods are creepy as hell, and with the flashlights we had, we couldn't see much further than about 4 trees or so. At one point, we just had no idea where we were, so we just stopped for a bit. This is when we started seeing eyes looking at us from the trees. I don't know about the others, but I know I saw at least 4 pairs of eyes. I'm pretty sure they were coyotes or some other kind of wildlife. So we turned around and somehow found our way back to camp. Thinking about it now, I'm honestly surprised we even found our way back. Being hunted and nearly attacked by a defensive mother golden eagle. It would have ripped into me had I not been able to jump into an old cellar hole nearby and crouch under some rocks. Just before I jumped, I looked back to see where the eagle was, and the thing was literally diving at me, and I jumped in a split second. Eagles swooped up and perched in a tree above me. There were trees growing out of the 200-year-old cellar hole, screeching at me the whole time. It had me pinned in there for 20 minutes until its noise brought another nesting eagle over from another part of the woods, and the two fought, fighting with talons out in the air. It was like a movie. I freaking ran away into the woods as fast as I could. It was terrifying. My brother and I used to have a farm with 150 acres of fairly old trees on it. Sometimes we would go out at night in the winter. If the moon was out and it was clear, we would strap on the snowshoes and cut some of the trees we marked in the summer months. We could hear the coyotes running near us. It was a little scary, and we always took 3 dogs with us. I used to camp in the woods in the winter, and then coyotes would always come looking for an easy meal. They killed all our cats one year. All the barn cats on the farms on our side of the highway suffered the same fate, all in less than 2 years. Toddler cousins started telling stories about the man in the dress. The man in the dress lived in their house and told them stories. The man in the dress says the soup is boiling dry. It was. My grandmother was visiting and sat in an armchair, the kind only one person can fit on. Cousin, you're sitting in the man in the dress. He's in the chair. Everyone. Cousin, it's all right. He doesn't mind. This went on for months. One day the family is all there, and my cousin's mother pulls out a photo album. Everyone is looking through the photos, reminiscing. My cousin is playing on the floor. Suddenly he gets up and toddles over. That's the man in the dress, he says, pointing at a man in a suit. The man in the suit in the picture is my grandmother's uncle, who died several years before my cousin was born, wearing a dressing gown, in that house, in that chair. No one has ever talked about him since my cousin was born. He often, do you hear about your grandmother's uncle who died before you were born? The man in the dress stopped turning up in my cousin's conversations after the great-uncle's daughter came to visit, and my cousin told her that the man in the dress said he loved her and he was sorry. She cried but wouldn't explain it. I sort of have a family obligation to be at worst neutral on the subject of ghosts. Was pretty young, 4 to 5, old enough to remember all of this pretty well, but small enough not to understand the paranormal. My dad and I were walking to the used bookstore, and our neighborhood had a lot of stray cats, pretty much everywhere. I really liked to coax them over and pet them, despite my dad being mildly over it. So as per usual, I saw a skinny little cat slink out from under a wooden fence, and I went over to see it. So, she was dark with tabby, I think, coloring, stripy browns with pretty eyes. When I call her over, kissy sounds, she seemed really friendly. She came right over and purred like a freight train. I remember stroking her back and her back getting all curved because she liked it. I remember feeling how skinny and tiny she was, like a bag of bones. Felt every little knob in her spine. My dad asked me what I was doing, and I just said, "I'm petting the cat, Daddy." And he seemed a little put off. He asked me if I was purring, and I said, "No, the cat's purring." He seemed really put off now because the cat kept purring while I spoke. He asked me to stop messing around, and I remember feeling upset because he seemed mad at me, but all I was doing was petting the cat. I kept petting the little cat, and it kept butting its head against my knees. My dad seemed really off now, and I remember how hard he grabbed me because I was crouched down, and he scooped me up, and my knees collided with my chest. He just said, "There's no cat, stop it." I started crying because there was a cat, and I wasn't lying. And normally he didn't mind if I played make-believe, but he seemed so upset by this real cat. I talked to him about it years later, and he seemed really irked and told me that there was never a cat, that he had seen me really petting nothing, crouched on the sidewalk, and he heard purring at my feet but no cat. And then he brought me home instead of the bookstore because it really creeped him out. He said that purring is what bothered him because he knew I wasn't doing it. I don't know what happened there. I've had many, but I want to share this one. isn't scary. In my house, we had a running joke that ghosts steal our missing things. It was all fun and games until one day. I was 14 and home alone. I was going to a football game at the town high school and I couldn't find my lanyard that had my house key on it. I couldn't leave without it. I was looking for so long, so I decided to say what we always say when we're done with hide and seek, which goes like, "Okay, name, very funny. I'm done now, you can put it back." I shit you not even 5 seconds after saying that, I heard a giggle come from down my hallway. Reminder, I'm completely home alone. I'm shitting bricks because I did a ghost just laugh at me. I start walking down the hallway toward my room, and there's my lanyard sitting there on the bed, exactly where I thought I'd put it before my shower. So I have a ghost that plays hide and seek, and we thought it was a joke until that moment. I was obsessed with figuring out the full history of my house to see if anyone has passed away inside. Turns out early 2000s, a special needs little boy passed away with his caretaker in my room. I read up on them and found something his parents said about him, along the lines of, "Name was such a bright child no matter his disabilities. He loved to play games and do math. His favorite game was hide and seek. Not that he was very good at it." Heart sank.